Part 39. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 382. Empress. Almost instantly, everyone in Tianyun Palace and the monks from all directions heard the source of the sound at the same time. It sounds as beautiful as a string in an empty valley, with a bit of arrogant and cold majesty. Who else could this voice be besides Empress Qingyu? In an instant, the elders and disciples of Tianyun Palace showed a hint of joy at the same time. If the Empress comes in person, let alone one Biming sect, even 10 Biming sects are here, there is nothing to be afraid of. Empress Qingyu. How is that possible? When he heard this voice, the arrogant Emperor Biming suddenly let go of his hand as if he was frightened. Shen Kongshuang, who was almost suffocated, fell to the ground and resumed breathing. Looking at that beautiful silhouette, Emperor Biming suddenly lost his expression filled with horror and fear. A full half-month has passed. After various intelligence and speculations, he thought that Chu Qingyu must have been buried in the imperial mausoleum. However, she never expected that Empress Qingyu would not only come back alive, but she would also be calm and without any scars on her body. Not only that, the aura of Nai Chen next to her was actually contained in her body, making it completely impossible to see through. In his memory, Nai Chen had only reached the sea-opening realm, but the feeling of not being able to see through Nai Chen's cultivation made Emperor Biming feel an inexplicable chill in his heart. Of course, what he was more afraid of was the appearance of Chu Qingyu. For today, he even risked everything to give it a try. He had already planned everything and almost used all the strength of Biming sect to lurk here. Discredit Empress Qingyu and annex Tianyun Palace. The plan was originally flawless, but it was all based on the premise that Chu Qingyu was buried in the imperial mausoleum. But he never expected that Chu Qingyu would actually come back. Moreover, there was a cold and piercing murderous intent in those cold and proud eyes. Empress. Haha. What I just said was actually just an accident. I didn't expect you to be able to come back. Congratulations to the Empress for surviving the catastrophe. I just made a mistake. I am willing to take the people in my sect back to the sect immediately. I also ask Empress Haihan not to take those things seriously. In just an instant, Emperor Biming's face completely changed. He completely lost the arrogance he had when he was about to take action. He bowed slightly and his expression was full of flattery. Because he knew very well how terrifying Empress Qingyu's strength was, and even if there was a slight possibility, he did not want to compete head-on with Chu Qingyu. Huh? There are rumors behind my back that this emperor is dead, and they even framed this emperor with slander and wanted to annex Tianyun Palace while I was away. Until now, you actually still want this emperor to let you go? However, Chu Qingyu frowned slightly. Although her beautiful face was as beautiful as poetry and painting without a single flaw, it seemed to exude a bone-chilling killing intent. Ling Ran's imperial power drifted around. Chu Qingyu hadn't even made any move yet, but the sharp pressure turned into ice and frost, spreading in all directions. It was obvious that the spells practiced in the door were related to ice, but now, it seemed to have no effect at all. The monks of Biming sect felt as if they were in the cold winter, and their whole bodies could not help but tremble. Looking at Chu Qingyu's cold figure, her eyes widened at the same time, filled with shock and fear. Even the body of Emperor Biming was covered with a layer of frost. Even though he was a powerful emperor, he seemed to be able to clearly feel the fear and trembling from his heart. This kind of fear was something he had never felt from any other emperor before he faced Empress Qingyu. The Empress' decisive killing and cold indifference are known to the world. Anyone who offends Emperor Wei and Tianyun Palace, no matter how they try to beg for mercy, cannot change the Empress's judgment. He knew very well that Chu Qingyu really had murderous intent at this moment and had no intention of letting him go. If this continues, sooner or later it will be a dead end. He never expected that Chu Qingyu would suddenly appear and let the situation evolve into such a situation. But now, it seems that nothing can be saved. Emperor Baiming suddenly laughed wildly, and his laughter seemed to be a bit crazy. Haha, Empress Qingyu, do you really think I'm afraid of you? As powerful emperors, is it possible that you think you are the only one who cannot be offended? Since I have been coveting Tianyun Palace for a long time, I have already made preparations. Even you, don't think you can make me surrender. I don't know if he was planning to give it a try, but Emperor Baiming's laughter actually seemed a bit hysterical. Everyone listen to my order and launch the Lingshuang formation. As the roar of Emperor Baiming fell, a jewel appeared in the hands of the monks of Baiming sect at the same time. As each bead shone brightly, countless strands of cold energy gathered forward at the same time. A large formation actually appeared at the feet of the Baiming sect monks. The formation was engraved with the words abundant spiritual energy, and frost filled the lines of the formation at an extremely fast speed. The formation had clearly not yet been activated, but a cold aura swept over the surroundings. Even the ground and vegetation were instantly frozen into blocks of ice. The raging cold was like a giant beast with its fangs spread out, trying to engulf everything around it. The strength of this great formation. For a moment, the surrounding cultivators showed a trace of astonishment at the same time. The Baiming sect has the ice method passed down by the ancestors, but even with the inheritance, it still takes a lot of time to build a powerful formation. A formation built temporarily can never be so powerful. There are also 7,749 defensive formations engraved on this formation. It is obvious that it is specially designed to deal with the terrifying sharp sword of the Queen Qingyu. In other words, the old guy Baiming Emperor had planned it long ago. He had ordered people to build a large formation long ago and constantly improve and strengthen it. I am afraid that all this started from the turmoil in the imperial mausoleum. At that time, the Baiming Emperor made a decision to take advantage of the chaos in the world and try to attack the queen. No wonder he blamed him for being so arrogant and domineering. It turned out that he had planned it long ago. Empress, be careful, this is a trap, get out of the way. Seeing a giant ice beast appear in the Lingshuang formation, the abyss mouth that had been gathering a lot of spiritual power for a long time and waiting to appear today was heading towards Chu Qingyu. The surrounding cultivators were all a little pale and shouted in astonishment. However, they only clearly saw a trace of indifference on Chu Qingyu's proud and beautiful face. It seemed that she had no intention of escaping at all, but just held the sword indifferently and slashed it out. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 383. The abyssal mouth of the ice beast seemed to contain an extremely terrifying power. In order to condense this formation, the Baiming sect spent a lot of manpower and material resources, and prepared for an unknown period of time, just for this killing intention. However, when the ice beast roared and opened its huge mouth to pounce on Chu Qingyu, in countless stunned eyes, Chu Qingyu was just standing there calmly, and even the movement of swinging the sword was a bit calm. It seemed that she didn't take the killing game that the Baiming sect spent a lot of energy to set up seriously. In the eyes of countless cultivators gathered from all directions of the Lanchuan continent, a green sword energy was seen slashing out from the bamboo sword. A sword, just a sword. This seemingly calm sword energy seemed to be surrounded by an extremely awe-inspiring power that could tear through everything. The faint light covering the bamboo sword was so sharp that it seemed to pierce the eyes of everyone who was watching this scene. Boom! How is it possible? Accompanied by a loud noise that shook the earth, not only the countless cultivators who were watching. The entire Baiming sect, even the Baiming Emperor, stared at the scene in horror. The ice beast engraved with countless patterns, and even the formation set up by the Baiming Emperor himself, repeatedly strengthened, was shattered by this sword. The huge body was scattered into countless ice fragments and fell to the ground dejectedly. The entire ice beast has completely turned into a pool of useless ice fragments, completely out of control. Looking at this scene, it was like a bomb exploded in the heart of the Beiming Emperor. In his speculation, this Lingshuang formation created by himself and dozens of the supreme elders in the sect, even if it cannot kill a great emperor with one blow, will be able to become a powerful means for my family to live in Qingyu. But he never expected that, let alone suppressing it, the ice-ling giant beast that had been summoned with countless efforts could not even resist a sword. How terrifying is the power of the Qingyu Queen! The Beiming Emperor was shocked. He dared to add insult to injury and even created the Lingshuang formation to deal with Chu Qingyu. Naturally, he had already investigated. He had learned about Chu Qingyu's strength from many aspects. Although she had reached the peak of the waiting realm, the queen was not invincible. Before entering the emperor's mausoleum, with Chu Qingyu's strength, it was impossible to directly destroy the ice-ling giant beast with a sword, and it was even very difficult to severely injure it instantly. If they attacked from both inside and outside and besieged it together, they might really be able to capture Chu Qingyu. But the situation at this moment was completely different. In other words, in just the half-month since entering the emperor's mausoleum, Chu Qingyu's strength had skyrocketed again. No, the empress has reached the peak of the waiting realm. Since she hasn't made a breakthrough, how can she improve her strength? The Emperor Beiming suddenly showed an expression of disbelief and astonishment. But at this moment, he suddenly noticed the bamboo sword in Chu Qingyu's hand. The cold sword energy drifted faintly from the bamboo sword, so cold that it made people shiver. Although the bamboo sword was just lying in Chu Qingyu's hand, it had the deepest terrifying power that seemed to be buried in the world of huge waves. Once it bursts out, the power it exerts will be enough to terrify any emperor. The awe-inspiring sword intent was something the Emperor Beiming had never seen before. In other words, after only half a month in the emperor's mausoleum, Chu Qingyu's sword intent had undergone earth-shaking changes and reached such a terrifying level. What did she experience in the emperor's mausoleum, and why did her understanding of the sword grow to such a level? Staring at Chu Qingyu, at this moment, the eyes of the great Emperor Beiming were filled with fear. He could feel how powerful the sword intent hidden in the bamboo sword was. With the current strength of the Queen Qingyu, even the Lingshuang formation was broken by a sword. Now, I am no match for the Queen Qingyu. If this continues, I and the entire sect may all die here. Queen, I shouldn't be so greedy that I want to take the opportunity to attack the Tianyun Palace. Please forgive my mistakes. In order to make up for my mistakes, I am willing to pay any price, even if it means surrendering to the Tianyun Palace and being a dog beside the Queen, and letting the Queen trample on me. The great Emperor Beiming seemed to have suddenly thrown away all his dignity, and begged hard in front of Chu Qingyu, humbly wanting to beg for forgiveness. As an emperor, he knew very well that losing dignity was a much more rational thing than death. However, this humble desire, which was like that of a madman, did not arouse Chu Qingyu's pity at all. The cold eyes became even colder and more intimidating. Spare you and let me trample you with my feet? But, do you think you deserve it? The cold sword intent emanating from Chu Qingyu exuded even more murderous intent than before. It seemed that even if she stepped on the ugly face of Emperor Beiming, she would dirty her shoes. Empress Qingyu, you lunatic, I will fight you. The plan was completely broken, and Emperor Beiming's eyes were filled with a bit of madness. He knew that even if he begged now, it would be useless. In the midst of a loud roar, the great Emperor Beiming suddenly opened his eyes wide, and countless icy auras condensed on his body, turning into a sword that was dozens of meters long. The cold wind was raging, the icicles were dancing, and the great Emperor Beiming hysterically controlled the sword to chop towards Chu Qingyu. Since you insist on taking my life, then die with me. As a fellow emperor, Empress Qingyu, do you really think you can kill me without any injury? What do you think? However, Facing the great Emperor Beiming, who seemed to have completely fallen into madness, Chu Qingyu only snorted contemptuously, and even seemed to not take him seriously at all. Escape in danger, abandon the people of the world, and want to save yourself is a crime. Trying to take advantage of the chaos and engulf the Tianyuan Palace is a crime. Disrespecting the emperor and despising the emperor's power is a crime. The cold voice floated out of Chu Qingyu's mouth, like an indifferent and supreme judgment, and every word seemed to be mixed with cold majesty. 3,000 black hair fluttered in the cold wind. Frost and snow were everywhere, which further set off the beautiful figure that seemed like a banished fairy. As an emperor, holding a bamboo sword in his hand, Chu Qingyu's aura and majesty were obviously completely different from those of the North Ming emperor. That was a kind of pure beauty that came out of the mud without being evil, and it was also a kind of awe-inspiring power that made people dare not have the slightest intention of invading. In this cold wind, Chu Qingyu slashed down with a cold sword. And under the eyes of everyone saw it clearly. This icy yet solemn sword cut off the long sword that Emperor Beiming had transformed into without any hindrance, and pierced through his body in an instant. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 384. Emperor Beiming's own strength is not that of a strong emperor, and that is why he tried every means to expand outward, and even exhausted his efforts to build a great formation. But even so, the scene in front of him was too unbelievable. Even the cultivators of Beiming sect wanted to step forward to stop it, but it was too late. Seeing the ice-cold long sword being cut off by a sword, the sword energy directly penetrated the emperor's body, and the Emperor Beiming collapsed in a pool of blood. They all showed horror. To be able to kill the emperor with a sword, how terrifying is the power of the Qingyu Queen. Before entering the imperial mausoleum, the battle against the three emperors made the four monks realize the overwhelming power of the queen. But almost everyone can clearly feel at this moment that Chu Qingyu's strength is even far better than when she faced the battle between the three emperors. Especially the mysterious sword intent. It seemed that it was this powerful sword intent that even the great emperors could not understand that made the great Emperor Beiming have no room for resistance at all, and he could only die with hatred. It only took half a month to go to the emperor's mausoleum, and he was able to improve his understanding of the sword to such a terrifying level. Is it that the empress encountered a strange encounter in the emperor's mausoleum, or, the empress's qualifications and comprehension ability are simply terrifying? No matter what, she was able to take another step forward in her strength at the peak of the Huading realm. The empress's qualifications and talents are really unmatched in the past 1,000 years. Maybe, the empress can really break this 1,000-year curse and become the first person in the past 1,000 years to be promoted to the Jizhung realm and be respected as the emperor. For a while, the cultivators from all directions couldn't help but exclaimed. But those cultivators of the Beiming sect were completely different. They couldn't help but shiver and couldn't look directly at Chu Qingyu's figure. At this moment, Chu Qingyu had put away her sword. The bamboo sword slowly disappeared, and she stole a glance at Nai Chen. The deep look in her eyes lasted only for a moment, and suddenly she thought of the many cultivators around her, and her eyes changed instantly, and she quickly showed a bit of coldness and arrogance again. Welcome the return of the Empress. As Elder Wang took the lead and walked forward, he excitedly bowed deeply to Chu Qingyu. For a moment, the cultivators around couldn't help but feel a throbbing in their hearts at the same time. After the turmoil in the imperial mausoleum, Chu Qingyu slowly walked out. It was enough to see that the one who quelled the chaos in the imperial mausoleum was the empress who had ventured into the depths of the imperial mausoleum. She fought against the three emperors, quelled the chaos in the imperial mausoleum, and killed the Emperor Beiming with a sword. Even though that beautiful figure had a stunning appearance, no one dared to have disrespectful thoughts. Empress, may I ask if the chaos in the imperial mausoleum was quelled by you and the Saintess of Flowers? Finally, the Sanskrit master of Laiyan temple couldn't help but stand up and asked. Chu Qingyu was stunned for a moment before saying. The only person who went to the earth spirit with this emperor was actually Nai Chen. Nai Chen. Hearing this, eyes converged on Nai Chen. Many cultivators suddenly realized that the aura on Nai Chen's body was completely restrained, making it impossible for them to see his realm clearly. If I remember correctly, Nai Chen was still in the sea-breaking realm when he entered the emperor's mausoleum. It is not so easy to break through to the great emperor realm. He should have restrained his aura to hide it. But for Nai Chen's current cultivation, almost all cultivators do not believe that he can break through in such a short time. But looking around, Master Fen Wen suddenly realized another extremely important question. Strange, what about the Saint of Flowers and Ao Lan? This sentence instantly caused a boiling. Just now the Empress said that she was only going with Nai Chen to resolve the unrest in the Imperial Mausoleum, but she did not mention Saint Fanhua at all. Could it be that Saint Fanhua has been buried in the Imperial Mausoleum? Don't worry, Fanhua and the others are still in the Imperial Mausoleum. Not only are their lives safe, they are not even injured at all. But soon, Chu Qingyu's voice interrupted everyone's increasingly absurd speculation. It turns out that Saint Fanhua is fine. Hearing this, everyone breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Seeing the puzzled eyes of the surrounding monks, Master Fen Wen couldn't help but stand up on their behalf and ask tremblingly. But Empress, why didn't the saint follow you, and hasn't left the Imperial Mausoleum yet? Ahem, this. After 2 awkward coughs, Chu Qingyu quickly showed her aloofness again and said in a deep voice. Don't ask about things you shouldn't ask, you will know later. Yes. This sentence frightened Master Fen Wen so much that he couldn't help but tremble, and he quickly closed his mouth and dared not say anything more. At this moment, Chu Qingyu also fell silent. The cold and beautiful eyes swept around, as if taking in every monk's behavior. Although the bamboo sword had been put away long ago, the overwhelming imperial power floating in the air was enough to make any monk feel extremely awed, and dared not have the slightest blasphemous intention. Silence for a long time. Finally, Chu Qingyu opened her red lips and said slowly. As you can see, the situation in the Imperial Mausoleum has calmed down. The source of this disaster actually came from the deceased Emperor Qiu Yan. After causing the Imperial Mausoleum to shake, Emperor Qiu Yan's soul hid in the underworld, trying to break the order of reincarnation between the two worlds. The reason why we were able to calm down this turmoil is that this emperor and Nai Chen went to the underworld and killed Emperor Qiu Yan. Now, both Lanchuan continent and the underworld have returned to peace. Emperor Qiu Yan's soul has been scattered, so there is no need to worry about subsequent changes. For the specific details, this emperor will send down documents after returning to Tianyun Palace and distribute them to various sects. This emperor will also send disciples to clean up the post-war ruins in the Imperial Mausoleum. You don't have to worry, you can go back to your respective sects with peace of mind. As soon as the words fell, it seemed that a storm of waves was set off in everyone's heart. Although the words of the Empress were brief and concise, each of them was a shocking event that could cause a sensation in the world. The source of the control of countless corpses in the Imperial Mausoleum was actually Emperor Qiu Yan. The Empress actually opened up the space between the two worlds and went to the underworld. These things obviously shocked all the cultivators of the major sects. It happened too suddenly, and its content was even more unbelievable to them. But facing the Empress Qingyu, no one dared to question it. Because everyone could clearly see from her cold and arrogant eyes that what the Empress said was not false. The air seemed to be frozen. Although no one spoke, every cultivator seemed to have a surging wave in their hearts, and they were terrified. By the way, Empress, now that the matter of the Imperial Mausoleum has been resolved, when are you going to announce the second thing you said before to the world? At this moment, Nai Chen broke the silence and asked with a slight smile. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 385. When this question was asked, Chu Qingyu seemed to be slightly stunned. Of course, this emperor knows. This matter will be announced by this emperor in person soon. For some reason, the cultivators seemed to be able to hear a trace of undetectable panic and embarrassment in this voice. But shaking their heads and looking at the cold and arrogant face of the Empress in front of them, everyone thought that they might just be dazzled. After all, this is the Empress, how could it be possible? At this time, Chu Qingyu spoke again. The various major sects present can return to their respective sections after a while. This emperor will hold a meeting. At that time, in addition to the specific matters of the imperial mausoleum and the underworld, this emperor will also announce to the world the second thing that has not been said. Chu Qingyu's voice was deliberately cold and arrogant, and it was obviously very similar to the past, but for some reason, many cultivators always felt that there was something strange. For a moment, it even felt that the Empress had a kind of cute feeling. Impossible, it must be just an illusion. But soon, those who inexplicably came up with this absurd idea immediately denied themselves. Anyone can be cute, but the Empress can never give anyone that feeling. So no matter how you think, it can only be an illusion. But, what will be the second thing the Empress is going to announce? I don't know, but in the eyes of the Empress, something that can be compared with the turmoil in the imperial mausoleum must be a shocking event that can cause an uproar in the world. I suddenly feel a little excited. I don't know whether the second thing the Empress is going to announce is a good thing or a bad thing. For a while, many people couldn't help thinking in their hearts. For the second thing that Chu Qingyu was about to announce to the world, everyone was full of curiosity. Kongshuang, take the rest of the disciples to the imperial mausoleum, put the emperor's body back in the mausoleum, and try to repair the damage in the imperial mausoleum. At this moment, Chu Qingyu had already walked to Shen Kongshuang and gently helped him up. When she touched her arm, Shen Kongshuang felt a cool breath that seemed to turn into spring water, flowing into her body. These spiritual energies flowed slowly in her body as if they had consciousness. As the cool breath permeated her body, Shen Kongshuang was surprised to find that all the injuries she suffered when facing the great Emperor Baiming were healed. Not only that, in the infiltration of these pure spiritual energies, she even felt that her physique had been cleansed and purified to a certain extent. She felt comfortable and refreshed all over. This feeling is too mysterious, worthy of being the Empress. Standing up again, Shen Kongshuang was full of gratitude and admiration. Although she did not show it in her expression, she bowed slightly respectfully to Chu Qingyu. With the order of the Empress, I will lead the disciples to Tianyun Hall. After speaking, Shen Kongshuang acted decisively and immediately summoned many disciples of Tianyun Hall to head towards the imperial mausoleum. The remaining situation in the emperor's mausoleum was handled by the Tianyun Hall. With the Empress here, other sects did not dare to stay any longer. Then we will take our leave first. We will return to the sect and wait quietly for the news from the Empress. All sects bowed to Chu Qingyu without any prior agreement. Because they had learned that the seal of the emperor's mausoleum might be broken, and it would even affect the entire Lanchuan continent. The number of sects gathered outside the emperor's mausoleum at this moment was far more than the dozens of sects that followed Chu Qingyu into the emperor's mausoleum at the beginning. Almost most of the third-rate and above sects in the world gathered here, and some of them even had been hiding in the dark. But at this moment, facing Chu Qingyu's cold and arrogant figure and the grace of calming the emperor's mausoleum, all the cultivators of the sects present showed gratitude and solemnity on their faces, bowed, and felt awe in their hearts. Well, I will return to Tianyun Hall soon. In a few days, I will announce the imperial mausoleum and the second matter mentioned before to all the sects in the world that participated in the imperial mausoleum. Chu Qingyu nodded slightly. After getting permission, the cultivators from all parties stood up with confidence, and led their sect forces to return. After more than half a month, the long-lasting and extremely difficult battle of the Imperial Mausoleum finally calmed down. The cultivators from various sects left here, and the people in Tianyun Hall were divided into two parts. One part followed the Frost Saint envoy to the Imperial Mausoleum to deal with the tragic situation inside. The other part followed Chu Qingyu to escort the Empress back to Tianyun Hall. Nai Chen smiled faintly at Chu Qingyu, exchanged glances, and glanced in the direction of the Imperial Mausoleum. After hesitating for a moment, Chu Qingyu, who instantly understood the meaning of the eyes, quickly nodded. The silent and tacit communication between the two was naturally because of the pitiful Saint of Flowers and Aolan behind the gate deep in the Imperial Mausoleum. Poor this person and dragon, although the Emperor's body could not break through the gate, there was no need to worry about safety. But for a whole half-month, listening to the continuous terrible noises outside the door must have caused them a lot of psychological trauma. Especially Aolan, no. Nai Chen, who originally thought that Aolan was timid, shook his head helplessly. The Saint and Aolan, I'm afraid one is more timid than the other, and now they are all trembling and hiding behind the door. Nai Chen, why are you here instead of following the Empress back to Tianyun Palace? At this moment, noticing that Nai Chen was about to go to the Imperial Mausoleum, Elder Wang couldn't help but ask with some confusion. Well, this. When asked about this topic, Nai Chen was a little embarrassed to answer. After two awkward coughs, he said. In fact, the Saint and Aolan are still waiting for me in the Imperial Mausoleum. The Saint and the others are still waiting for you. But hasn't the Imperial Mausoleum been calmed down? Why haven't they left yet? Elder Wang seemed to have a lot of question marks on his head. Nai Chen couldn't help but sigh. This is a long story. In fact, the Saint and Aolan are still trapped in the Imperial Mausoleum and can't get out. This time, Elder Wang was completely stunned. They are still trapped in the Imperial Mausoleum. How is it possible? As a great emperor, who is the Saint? She actually has the ability to trap her. After saying this, Elder Wang found that Nai Chen was looking at him. Moreover, there was a hint of helplessness in his eyes, as if he was looking at a fool. That person is me. With Nai Chen's long sigh, Elder Wang was completely dumbfounded. Let's not talk about how Nai Chen did such an outrageous thing, locking the Saint and Aolan in the Imperial Mausoleum. Is this something a human can do? Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 386. Isn't it over yet? It should have been half a month. It's not just half a month, I feel like half a year has passed. Inside the gate deep in the Imperial Mausoleum, two figures, one large and one small, were nestled together, full of pitiful feelings. When I first hid behind the gate, the Flower Saint didn't want to lose her majesty as a saint, and Aolan didn't want to lose the dignity of the Dragon King, so they tried their best to pretend not to be so scared. But after half a month, one person and one dragon have long forgotten their dignity. They hugged each other for warmth, with tears in their eyes, not to mention how pitiful they were. It's strange, why is there no sound outside? Is it possible that the situation inside the Imperial Mausoleum has been resolved? Suddenly realizing that the incessant shouting during this period had all disappeared, Aolan wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and asked with some surprise. But maybe those emperor corpses are deliberately pretending to be silent in order to lure us out and eat us. They can't open the door no matter what. However, the answer from the Blossom Saintess instantly dispelled Aoian's beautiful thoughts. Aoian's heart sank, and she fell into despair again. Holy girl, aren't you a powerful emperor? Why are you so cowardly that you still hold me in tears? You keep saying that you are the Dragon King with the purest blood since ancient times. Why don't you still hug me and make my clothes wet from crying? The Blossom Saint responded by pointing to her clothes, which were wet with Aoian's tears and were somewhat transparent. The atmosphere seemed to be silent for a long time. Immediately afterwards, whoa. Even more pitiful cries echoed in the dark space, and the poor flower saint and Aolan hugged tighter. Although with their level of cultivation, even if they could hide here for decades without eating or drinking, it would be a minor problem, but they had no idea how long they might continue to be trapped like this. But at this moment, the door that had been closed for half a month and seemed like it could never be opened was suddenly pushed. Who is it? The Blossom Saint and Aolan looked at the door in astonishment at the same time. Because they knew very well that facing this door that seemed to be full of taboos, those emperor corpses would never touch it easily. Could it be? At this moment, the door opened in response. A dazzling light shone into this pitch-black darkness, which had not seen light for an unknown amount of time. Following the light, one person and one dragon clearly saw the figure walking into the door. Nai Chen. For a moment, the eyes of the Blossom Saint and Aolan seemed to be stagnant. The entire space seemed to fall into silence. Following the light, Nai Chen could clearly see that tears were flashing in Aoian's eyes, which were already mixed with excitement and grievance at the same time. That's too much. You left the two of us here for so long. Finally, Aolan was the first to be unable to hold on any longer, so she flew over crying and hugged Nai Chen's thigh. Those two noble little dragon horns actually rubbed against Nai Chen's legs like a baby. The same goes for the saint. If it is a few more days, I will open the door and go out to fight them. With Aolan taking the lead, the flower saint maiden couldn't help but feel aggrieved and rushed forward. The Saint of Blossoms threw herself on her chest, crying until the pear blossoms were wet with rain. Aolan hugged her thighs and cried pitifully. Anyone who looks at this man and a dragon cannot help but feel pity. As the clothes on his chest and pants were completely soaked in a short time, Nai Chen couldn't help but be amused by the pitiful looks of the two of them. After waiting quietly for a while, Nai Chen asked softly. You haven't encountered any danger here? Well, I haven't encountered any danger, but the problem is. The flower saint was a little shy to answer. At this moment, when she came back to her senses, she suddenly noticed that she was crawling on Nai Chen's chest, and even his clothes were soaked with tears. Suddenly, a sense of shame came over her, and the flower saint quickly took a step back and tried to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes with her sleeves. But the shameful scene just now seems to have been fully seen. Suddenly remembering something, the flower saint raised her head and couldn't help but look outside. Sure enough, the blood-colored sky had slowly dissipated, turning into the originally sacred and awe-inspiring light golden color within the imperial mausoleum. And the strange aura that originally filled the imperial mausoleum has all disappeared. By the way, why did the imperial mausoleum suddenly recover? Could it be that you and the empress went to the underworld to resolve the matter? The flower saint asked curiously. Well, the empress and I went to the underworld and found that the culprit behind all this was Emperor Qiu Yan. After solving it, the imperial mausoleum under the control of Emperor Qiuyan returned to its original state, and the corpses of the emperor also returned to peace. Nai Chen briefly summarized it. It's actually Emperor Qiuyan. This sentence made the Blossom Saint maid suddenly feel a little surprised. In the imperial mausoleum, just a wisp of the remnant soul of Emperor Qiuyan has such terrifying strength. It is hard to imagine how terrifying the complete soul of Emperor Qiuyan would be. Thinking of this, the flower saintess lowered her head unconsciously, with a trace of guilt on her face. After hesitating for a long time, she finally spoke truthfully. Facing Emperor Qiu Yan, I guess you guys started a fierce battle the moment you arrived in the underworld. Sorry, I thought you two had been in the underworld for so long, Maybe you were going on vacation or even a honeymoon. I didn't expect the truth to be like this. I'm a little ashamed of my thoughts. I'm sorry, I actually thought so before, but I didn't expect that there would be a day when I would judge a gentleman by my own heart. Even Aolan, who was usually quite naughty, felt deeply guilty. Seeing the honest and ashamed eyes of the big and the small, and even some who didn't dare to look at him, Nai Chen couldn't help but laugh and comforted them. It's nothing, the Empress and I are just trying our best. After all, you have been waiting here for so long and have suffered a lot. Well. At this time, the guilt of Saint Fanhua and Aolan seemed to be reduced a little, as if the heavy burden that had been hanging in their hearts was suddenly relieved. Aolan nodded seriously, as if to change the topic to change his mood, forced a smile, and looked up at Nai Chen. By the way, how is the scenery in the underworld? It should be pretty good. Of course, the scenery in the underworld is much better than you think. Speaking of this, Nai Chen suddenly became interested. Maybe you don't know that the underworld has towns and dynasties like humans, as well as arable wheat fields and tea houses for drinking tea. Of course, there are also beaches and holy seas where you can wear bikinis. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 387. There is actually a sea in the underworld. And, what is a bikini? Aoian's little head seemed to be full of question marks. Sea? Of course there is a sea. Although I had doubts before, there is indeed a sea in the underworld. Nai Chen may not care about other things, but when talking about this, he instantly became interested. Anyway, the battle was over, so Nai Chen talked about the environment in the underworld in a relaxed manner. Not only is there a sea in the underworld, but it is even more beautiful than the one in Lanchuan continent. The sea surface was sparkling, surging with brilliant golden light. Not only that, the sea water was extremely cool and quite comfortable. The Empress and I spent 2 days of our honeymoon in the Holy See. Because the environment was very good, we played beach volleyball on the coast for a long time. I have to admit that the ball was simply rough, especially when the Empress was wearing a bikini. It's a pity that the sunscreen and sun loungers were not used. I must make full use of them next time. Ahem, anyway, after playing beach volleyball, the Empress and I entered the Holy See. We fought for 3 hours, and then. That's not right. I just introduced the environment of the underworld. I didn't say the rest. Halfway through, Nai Chen suddenly paused, suddenly realizing that he seemed to have said a little too much. He said that there was no problem with the Holy See, but how could he accidentally tell about his honeymoon with the Empress at the beach? If it was someone else, Nai Chen would never be so careless. But just now, Saint Flower and Aolan were crying like pear blossoms in the rain, looking pitiful. In addition, the beautiful scene of the honeymoon in the Holy See was still fresh in his memory. Facing Aoian's question, Nai Chen accidentally slacked off and completely ignored this important question. It doesn't matter who he tells it to, but it's not okay for Saint Flower and Aolan, who have been trapped here and shivering for half a month. However, it seems to be a little late. Honeymoon at the beach, and playing ball sweetly with the Empress. Although I don't know what a bikini is, from the tone of voice, it must be a very beautiful and erotic dress worn by the Empress. For a moment, Saint Flower and Aoian's eyes seemed to become a little empty. But it was this empty look looking at Nai Chen that made people feel a chill in their backs. I really did go to the underworld with the Empress and had a fierce battle. Don't misunderstand me. What I just said was just a misunderstanding. Nai Chen waved his hand quickly after realizing that something was wrong. Fight? Do you mean the kind of battle with the Empress for 3 hours in the sea? Nai Chen. That's too much. You left us here trembling while you went on a honeymoon with the Empress. And you're fighting in the sea. Wu, Nai Chen, I'll fight you. I'll fight you too. Finally, Saint Fanhua and Aolan couldn't hold it anymore. With tears flashing in their eyes, they locked onto Nai Chen's figure and chased after him. Saint, calm down. This was just an accident. I didn't mean to say it to make you jealous. Aolan, why are you following me? We signed a master-servant contract. I bullied Saint Fanhua and Aolan a lot on weekdays, but Nai Chen couldn't fight back because he was in the wrong. Seeing the two figures approaching, he had no choice but to kick the ceiling and flee outside. Swoosh, bang. At this moment, Elder Wang, who was leading his disciples to clean the imperial mausoleum, suddenly heard a sound from the horizon and looked far away. But he saw three figures breaking through the house, one in front and two behind, chasing away. The one in front was Nai Chen, and the one behind seemed to be, the Saint and Aolan. 3 hours, no, I didn't expect that you humans are more powerful than dragons. It's really, too scary. Damn it, no matter what, I will never let you escape today. Accompanied by Aoian's shameful voice, the speed of the three figures chasing seemed to increase a bit. Ding, it is detected that the host is being chased. Do you want to buy a body skill to avoid the pursuit? Buy. Nai Chen's voice fell, and a body skill was quickly learned. Shadow Step. Flying Swallow Technique. Star Picking Technique. Damn it, how could he run so fast? With the blessing of one body technique after another, two angry voices came from the distant sky, and Nai Chen finally got rid of the pursuit. Huh, it's not easy. Seeing that the Flower Saint did not chase him anymore, Nai Chen let out a long sigh. Unconsciously, he had returned to Tianyun Hall. The clouds and mist were misty, and the Tianyun Hall towering on the mountain exuded an inviolable majesty. No longer had to walk up the stairs step by step like when he first came to Tianyun Hall. Nai Chen rode the wind and landed on the top of Tianyun Hall. Brother Nai, you are back. Brother Nai. When they saw Nai Chen's figure, all the disciples of Tianyun Hall immediately came forward to greet him excitedly. Nai Chen smiled at everyone and looked around. It was almost the same as before I left. It was worthy of being the Tianyun Palace governed by the Empress. Even though it had been more than half a month since Chu Qingyu entered the Imperial Mausoleum, Tianyun Palace was still proceeding according to the previous situation in an orderly manner due to strict discipline. Not only that, except for the disciples who patrol daily. Many people have already begun to inspect the various formations and buildings in Tianyun Palace, and have placed some accessories and guide signs on the stairs leading to the top of the mountain. When leaving the Imperial Mausoleum, the Empress had already announced that she would announce the specific events in the Imperial Mausoleum soon, as well as the second important thing she wanted to announce to the world. These disciples are obviously preparing for the upcoming conference. During the exchange, many people were excited at the same time. Although I am also looking forward to what happens in the Imperial Mausoleum, but tell me, what is the second thing the Empress wants to say? I don't know, but it must be a shocking event that can cause the world to boil. Even if they couldn't guess at all, the disciples' eyes were full of expectation, trying their best to guess what the Empress was going to announce. Nai Chen couldn't help but smile. Although they are now making guesses one by one, if they learn the truth, their jaws will probably drop out of surprise. After all, if I guessed correctly, the second major event mentioned by the Empress was probably shock. The love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 388. Passing by Tianyun Hall, Nai Chen happened to see Chu Qingyu writing at the desk in the hall. Not only must one recall the events in the Imperial Mausoleum and the underworld carefully, but one must also quietly omit the details of the date. Holding a pen in hand, the Empress's expression seemed quite serious. Although the light blue phoenix skirt still had a hint of coldness, the expression of constant thinking was quite cute in Nai-chan's eyes. Of course, as the saying goes, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. If ordinary cultivators were so close to the empress, they would probably be so scared that they would not even dare to raise their heads, let alone appreciate the beauty of the empress. A smile appeared on Nai-chan's lips, but he did not intend to go in and disturb Chu Qingyu. After staying outside for a while, he turned around and left and returned to his residence. After closing the door, Nai-chen looked inside his body. After reaching the realm of the great emperor, the spiritual sea in his body had turned into a vast void. Boundless, shapeless, and without form, but with a mysterious aura that floats in the void. After returning from the emperor's mausoleum, he temporarily sealed the fluctuations of the spiritual energy in his body. So far, except for the empress, no one knows that he has reached the realm of the great emperor. And when this news spreads, it is probably enough to cause an uproar in the world. After all, so far, no force or sect has ever been able to have two great emperors at the same time in the past 1,000 years. The Tianyun Palace, which can have two great emperors, is equivalent to breaking the balance of power in the Lanchuan continent for thousands of years. Even any sect is enough to be afraid and dare not have any idea of confrontation. But after experiencing the events in the emperor's mausoleum and the underworld, Nai-chen has begun to realize that the Lanchuan continent is far less special than imagined in the world of heaven and earth. Countless worlds, countless branches, countless continents, the vast world of the Lanchuan continent is actually just one of the millions of leaves. Even the top emperors on the Lanchuan continent cannot be self-centered and stop striving for progress. Because above the emperors, there are not only emperors in the Jizhung realm, but also many powerful realms unknown to many cultivators. Nai-chen sat quietly on the bed, guiding the spiritual energy to cover the doors and windows, making it impossible for outsiders to see the scene inside the house. In the palm of Nai-chen's hand, a blood-red spirit slowly floated up. The breath on the blood crystal was extremely strange, with a sense of bloody killing, a strange underworld aura, but also a trace of undetectable holy breath. Nai-chen frowned slightly, wrapped the blood crystal with a layer of spiritual energy, and the spiritual energy floated in the air. Dragon Blood Spirit. According to the system's prompt, the name of the spirit sealed in the spiritual energy is close to the dragon blood array. And this blood crystal was exactly what Nai-chen fell on the shore from the Huangchuan River after he annihilated Emperor Qiu Yan. Although the blood crystal has an extremely strong and strange murderous aura when it is carefully observed. But when it falls on the shore beside the Nahi Bridge, it is extremely difficult to detect. If it weren't for the system's help to collect it, Nai-chen would not even know that this thing exists. So what exactly is this thing? Nai-chen looked at the blood crystal sealed by his own power and fell into deep contemplation. After all, the things floating on the Huangchuan River can never be ordinary mortals. And at this moment, the blood crystal wrapped in the spiritual energy suddenly burst out with a scarlet light. The rich blood-red color tried to come out with extremely fierce power. Nai-chen's spiritual energy originally had a restraint on the demons, but the strange power of the blood crystal was far beyond expectations. Even though the spiritual energy was extremely tightly guarded, it could not resist the explosion of the blood crystal at all. Bang! Suddenly, the blood crystal actually tore a crack in the golden spiritual energy encirclement. In the crack that looked like a beast's bite, the blood crystal broke out and rushed straight towards Nai-chen. And the speed of the burst was terrifying. Even Nai-chen could only barely react and tried to reach out to stop it. However, although Nai-chen's palm blocked in front of him in time, when the blood crystal touched his palm, it was firmly attached to the center of his palm like a parasite. The rich blood energy also burst out from the blood crystal and rushed into Nai-chen's body without any signs. In just a moment, Nai-chen felt an extremely rich blood energy of killing spread along his palm. And the speed was so fast that it flowed through the blood vessels of his body in the blink of an eye. It was like suddenly falling into the cold winter, and the icy breath flowing in the blood made Nichien's whole body seem to be frozen. Not only that, an extremely evil desire actually sprouted in his heart. Killing, blood, desire. In Nichien's eyes, it seemed as if a bloody sky appeared. Under the sky, all order was overturned. Killing became the norm, and people compared their crimes. Countless people stained the earth with blood, and countless people also opened their bloody fangs, laughing miserably as they continued to slaughter. A voice seemed to be constantly circling and echoing in Nichien's ears, telling him over and over again. Kill, break the order. Only by spreading killing all over the world, making all order chaotic, and letting pain and hatred engulf everyone's heart, can you find what you desire, and you can peek into a different world. This voice, like a bewitching voice, echoed in Nichien's ears again and again, washing his mind and thoughts. Scarlet blood crystals spread out spider web-like patterns on Nichien's palm, and the extremely strong bloody smell almost wrapped his entire body in it. Even Nichien's eyes gradually began to become a little empty, and the corners of his mouth slightly raised, faintly emitting a strange and cold smile. Yes, that's it, succumb to your desire. Once you can sink into it and start to enjoy it, what awaits you will be a long day that will make you happy forever. As if sensing Nichien's gradual fall, the laughter of the bewitching voice became more and more shrill and strange, as if it was extremely excited. Desire that can interest me? Sorry, you are not qualified. However, Nichien, whose eyes were faintly covered with a layer of blood, suddenly smiled at this time. The sacred golden light burst out from his body. In an instant, it swept away all the strange blood. How can you possibly escape my enchantment? Accompanied by a horrified roar, awe-inspiring righteousness rose up, and a holy golden light burst out from Nichien's resolute eyes. The righteousness instantly swept away all enchantments and evil spirits. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 389. The shrill roars echoed one after another, and the bewitching voice seemed to want to mobilize all the blood-colored power to resist. But no matter how hard he struggled, he could only dissolve in vain. The blood color that had penetrated into Nichien's body had been completely wiped out, and the bewitching voice that kept echoing in Nichien's ears gradually returned to silence. Crack. In the silent room, the blood crystal adsorbed on Nichien's palm lost its support and fell directly down. Falling to the ground, the blood crystal that had lost its power was extremely fragile, and it broke directly into a pool of powder and scattered on the ground. I didn't expect this thing to be so weird. The golden light in Nichien's eyes slowly dissipated, and a trace of blood disappeared in the air. His brows were slightly wrinkled, and he couldn't help but have a trace of solemnity in his expression. The power on the blood crystal was extremely ancient and weird. Even if it was trapped with spiritual energy, it was unexpected that it was broken through without any hindrance. When the blood crystal was absorbed in Nichien's palm and invaded his mind, Nichien even seemed to see the hell filled with endless blood and bones. The boundless and terrifying scene was ferocious, as if it was going to swallow him up completely. Unfortunately, these bewitching sounds could not swallow him up completely, but instead activated the Xiangu holy body. When the Xiangu holy body burst out with power, those strange blood colors were instantly swept away, and finally could only be annihilated unwillingly. The Xiangu holy body is worthy of being the first in ancient times, and it is also the supreme holy body that has the most fundamental restraint on evil spirits. No matter what kind of bewitching and attack it faces, it is like an unshakable mountain, and it will never break through. But in the fight with the dragon blood spirit, Nichien knew how strange the bewitching power contained in this blood crystal was. Even though he possessed the Xiangu saint body, he was controlled for a short period of time. If it was someone else. It seems that the reason why Emperor Qiu Yan's soul was polluted was not only because his mind changed during the long wait. It is very likely that this thing is the culprit. Nai Chen once again wrapped the blood crystal with spiritual energy, and turned it into flames with the mysterious blood energy of the Xiangu saint body. The golden flames completely engulfed the blood crystals in an instant, and even the blood color in it seemed to turn into food. As if to realize that even the remaining residues would be melted, the blood fragments kept struggling and resisting. Each blood crystal seemed to roar ferociously, trying to break free. Unfortunately, in front of the sacred golden flame, they had no place to hide. After a while, they were burned to ashes in the painful struggle, and even the last trace of blood disappeared completely. The entire dragon blood essence was completely melted under the burning of the flames. But in the flames, as if it had finally broken free from its restraints, a milky white residual soul emerged from it. The aura on the residual soul was extremely pure. Not only did it seem to be uncontaminated by the color of blood, but it also did not have any other evil thoughts. And that wisp of residual soul, which was even only the size of a finger, made Nai Chen feel a very familiar aura. This is the residual soul of Emperor Qiu Yan. Nai Chen's eyes suddenly revealed a touch of joy. He had never expected that he would find the residual soul of Emperor Qiu Yan in the broken blood crystal, and it was a soul that was not polluted at all. At the Nehi Bridge, Emperor Qiu Yan's soul had already been shattered by the joint efforts of himself and the Empress. The shattering of the soul means that it has completely disappeared between heaven and earth. All consciousness and all existence will be annihilated, and it will never be able to enter the reincarnation again. But unexpectedly, there is still a wisp of residual soul of Emperor Qiu Yan here. The residual soul is not a complete soul. Without a complete 3 souls and 6 spirits, one cannot re-enter the cycle of reincarnation and become a human being again. But this remaining wisp of remnant soul is enough to be a hope. Although it is extremely slim, it also prevents Emperor Qiu Yan from completely disappearing between heaven and earth. Perhaps, there is a glimmer of chance to be reborn. If one day Emperor Qiu Yan's Taoist companion who has entered the cycle of reincarnation can see this remnant soul, perhaps they can also feel a little comfort in their hearts. Emperor Qiu Yan's past is indeed somewhat admirable. Although it is not known whether there is really such a slim chance, Nai Chen still carefully collected the remnant soul of Emperor Qiu Yan and quietly placed it in the vast space ring. In the room, except for a slight smell of burning flames, there is no trace of dragon blood essence. Nai Chen still frowned and thought about the source of this dragon blood essence. System, do you know where the dragon blood essence comes from? Sorry host, its source cannot be detected. Unexpectedly, even the system had no idea where the dragon blood essence came from. Logically speaking, anything from Lanchuan continent should not be able to escape the system's detection. What is it? After thinking for a moment, Nai Chen's mind suddenly seemed to have a flash of inspiration. Then let me ask you, does this dragon blood essence belong to Lanchuan continent or the underworld? Ding, after the system detection, it is not. After a long silence, the system finally answered. This answer also surprised Nai Chen. Neither Lanchuan continent nor the underworld, this dragon blood essence is indeed related to other spiritual realms. No wonder the power of the dragon blood essence is so strange, even strong enough to affect the mind of the emperor's soul. But where exactly is it? After all, he knew very little about other spiritual realms. Nai Chen pondered for a while, but couldn't figure out any cause and effect. It seems that I have to go to the sutra library to find some information. Just as Nai Chen was about to leave, there was a knock on the door. Is Taoist fellow Nai Chen here? I have something to ask you. The voice coming from outside the door was Elder Wang. It seems that Elder Wang has returned to Tianyun Hall with some disciples. What's the matter? Nai Chen asked directly without opening the door. Hearing the voice, Elder Wang also spoke quickly. Ahem, in fact, after experiencing the events in the Imperial Mausoleum, many disciples are eager to improve their strength. But I have already been promoted to the sea-breaking realm for a long time, and I have completely forgotten how I trained when I was a disciple. So I was thinking, can fellow Daoist Nai Chen help me train these disciples? No. Even though Elder Wang's voice was very humble, Nai Chen refused without hesitation. This refusal is too decisive. Elder Wang couldn't help but cough awkwardly. But suddenly he thought of something, and he suddenly leaned over the crack of the door and whispered. By the way, I heard a rumor that the Empress seems to be inspecting the training of the disciples today. Then I'll go. But when he finished the sentence, Nai Chen's response came instantly. Elder Wang. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 390. Following Nai Chen out of the house, Elder Wang couldn't help feeling embarrassed. After being silent for a while, he finally couldn't help but said. Well, fellow Taoist Nai Chen, I seriously suspect that you dislike me. How is that possible? Elder Wang is a dignified elder, how could I dislike you? However, Nai Chen spread his hands innocently. But, why were you so decisive when you rejected me, but then agreed instantly when the Empress was mentioned? Elder Wang couldn't help crying. He went to Nai Chen several times to drink and talk, and asked for advice on how to find a Taoist companion. He originally thought that he and Nai Chen had become friends who transcended ages. But at this moment, I felt a very clear difference in treatment. Moreover, the gap in differential treatment is too big. No way. The Empress is so arrogant and scary. How could I allow you to teach your disciples just for the sake of the Empress? I just want to give face to Elder Wang. Nai Chen smiled and patted Elder Wang on the shoulder, as if what he said was true. But Elder Wang didn't believe it at all. In the past, when Nai Chen said that he and the Empress went to the Abyss Canyon to kill 2 giant pythons bathing in the waves, he never had the slightest doubt. But now, Elder Wang has increasingly felt that something is wrong. No matter what Nai Chen said, he had already made up his mind. In Nai Chen's eyes, the Empress was definitely a different existence. Fortunately, the Empress who wrote on the uselessness of Taoist couples has already said many times that she would not be interested in Taoist couples. Although his attitude towards Nai Chen was indeed a little special, it was by no means that he had some unknown thoughts. But Elder Wang still didn't dare to rest assured. It just so happens that the Empress will come to visit the disciples' training this time no matter what, we must be careful and take a closer look. Elder Wang was firm in his thoughts and couldn't help but make up his mind secretly. After a while, the two came to the vast open space in front of the statue of the Empress. The people gathered on the field this time were all male disciples. Today was not originally a time for the disciples to focus on training, but after returning from the imperial mausoleum, many male disciples who saw the scene felt severely traumatized in their hearts. Therefore, the male disciples organized themselves voluntarily, hoping to quickly improve their strength through increased training and shoulder the heavy burden of being a man. They didn't expect that Elder Wang would actually invite Nai Chen. Senior brother Nai is actually here. The moment they saw Nai Chen's figure, many disciples immediately started an uproar. They already knew that Nai Chen was the only one accompanying the Empress to the underworld to fight Emperor Qiu Yan this time. Over the years since Tianyuan Palace was established, countless sons of genius have appeared. The cultivation level of every supreme elder and holy envoy is comparable to that of the Holy Emperor. But there was never anyone qualified to accompany the Empress to fight side by side. This incident obviously made all the disciples feel even more infinite admiration. I have brought Nai Chen here. If you have any questions about your cultivation, just ask them directly. Facing the excited male disciples, Elder Wang coughed lightly and said in a deep voice. These words instantly caused a commotion below. After all, the disciples had already wanted to ask Nai-Chen countless questions, but Nai-Chen's appearance was too rare. Either he left Tianyun Palace and was outside, or he was summoned by the Empress, and he didn't know what to do. After finally seizing such an opportunity, the disciples were naturally unwilling to give up. But the questions asked were extremely complex and not confusing at all. Some people asked what kind of skills Nai-Chen had practiced to be able to maintain such a handsome appearance. Some people asked if Nai-Chen encountered any adventures that made it possible for his cultivation to improve so quickly. What's more, he actually dared to ask Nai-Chen whether it was true that he and the Empress quietly became boyfriend and girlfriend. Of course, the disciple who accidentally asked the last question suddenly realized that he had made a mistake. But before he could cover his mouth, he was dragged into the crowd and beaten violently. After all, you can eat whatever you want, but this kind of joke is definitely not allowed. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that the Empress wrote on the uselessness of Taoist companions and was regarded as a grand ceremony by countless sects with many female disciples is enough to put this rumor to rest. The Empress's closeness to Nai-Chen was definitely just out of her approval of a promising fairy. A real couple, of course, can't be a simple concern. At least they should give a bottle of water during training. That's a real couple. Yes, it is impossible for the Empress to give water to others. Therefore, the Empress's approach to Nai-Chen was just her expectation of Nai-Chen's talent, and it was absolutely impossible for them to be a couple. Yeah, I finally figured it out, ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. The analysis of two elite inner disciples made things clear in an instant. After hearing these words, the disciples on the side also suddenly realized, as if they had discovered a new world. Yes, why didn't I think of it before? Ha ha ha, the Empress brings water? That is of course absolutely impossible. Let alone a disciple, even a powerful emperor is not worthy of making the Empress do such a thing. Thinking of this, many male disciples felt very good, and the sour feeling that they wanted to lose their teeth finally dissipated. Brother Nai, I would like to ask what is the reason for your continuous strengthening? At this time, a disciple finally asked a slightly more useful question. The reason for becoming stronger? It's because of the Empress. But when Nai-Chen answered, the air around him seemed to be silent in an instant. The faces of those disciples who were still happy from the bottom of their hearts suddenly stiffened. But soon, Nai-Chen continued. As the totem and belief of Tianyun Temple, the Empress is a great existence worthy of our dedication. If you take protecting the Empress as your goal, you can make your faith firm and turn it into the only thing that can never be shaken. Work hard for the Empress, and one day you will be able to break through the limit, be qualified to protect Tianyun Temple, and be qualified to contribute to the Empress. It is for such a future that you can be determined and constantly improve your own strength. These words made the male disciples present feel excited. At the same time, they couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. So it's for the Empress. I thought senior brother Nai really had some improper thoughts about the Empress. I almost thought so. But, besides this, I have another way to become stronger. But before the discussion was over, Nai-Chen suddenly spoke again. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 391. The moment these words were spoken, the air became stagnant for a moment. The disciples stared at each other in astonishment, fearing that Nai-Chen would say the words that made them feel uneasy just now. But to their complete surprise, Nai-Chen slowly said, "That's exercise. Exercise." For a moment, many people were stunned at the same time. After all, this word is not common to monks. Although physical training usually requires rigorous and strenuous exercise, for the vast majority of monks who practice Kung Fu, practicing Kung Fu is the main way of cultivation, and there is no need for exercise to improve the minimal physical fitness. If you really think that, you are totally wrong. However, As if he had seen through their thoughts, Nai Chen smiled slightly. Perhaps in the perception of most people, the level of cultivation determines strength. The strength of magic weapons and techniques directly determines combat effectiveness, but you are completely unaware of how important the things you ignore are. Just like the Empress strength seems to have temporarily stayed at the peak of the Hua Cauldron realm, and she has not improved before and after entering the Emperor's mausoleum. But in fact, the sword intention that she comprehended in the underworld increased the Empress' true strength to an unimaginable level. So much so that when facing Emperor Baiming, who was also in the realm of the Great Emperor, he could easily kill him with one sword. And similar to this, although seemingly simple exercise, there is no way to show intuitive changes like improving strength. But it can subtly improve your body and even your understanding of practice. During the hard training, the effect of these subtle changes cannot be measured by what is seen on the surface. These words were indeed part of Nai Chen's understanding of cultivation in Lanchuan continent. Many people only pay attention to the appearance, not the inside, and only focus on the realm of cultivation. But he doesn't know that only by improving his own strength can he reach a higher ceiling. After speaking, Nai Chen deliberately released part of his aura. When a faint light shrouded the surroundings, the mysterious power of choking lettuce contained in the aura made many disciples unable to help but feel a little stunned. If I remember correctly, before Nai Chen entered the Imperial Mausoleum, his strength had already reached the sea-opening realm. But at this moment, they could clearly feel that the strong aura on Nai Chen's body was infinitely more terrifying than before. This is the difference. You must know that many of the disciples present have entered Tianyun Palace for several years or even more than 10 years. Almost the vast majority of them spent much less time getting started than Nai Chen. But compared to Nai Chen, the cultivation levels of all the disciples present were completely out of reach. It was even impossible to look up at the retreating figure from a distance. Could it be said that physical training can really subtly improve strength? All the disciples couldn't help but turned pale in astonishment. But even though they were doubtful, they couldn't find any loopholes in what Nai Chen said just now. "Thank you, Senior Brother Nai, for your teachings. We understand." The disciples couldn't help feeling excited and quickly requested. "But we still don't know how to train the physical body, so we ask Brother Nai to help us." "Don't worry, since I have promised to help you train for a day, leave this to me." According to Elder Wang's news, the Empress will come to inspect soon. Therefore, Nai Chen had no intention of refusing and began to train the disciples of Tianyun Hall. The method of training is based on the training he experienced when he was at Blue Star. Standing in military posture, push UPS, pull UPS, long distance running, and various physical exercises. After all, the disciples of Tianyun Palace are all immortal seedlings with great qualifications. Even if they have not been trained before, their physiques are many times better than ordinary people. Therefore, the intensity of training used by Nai Chen was naturally much higher than during his own military training. A long-distance run requires a full 5,000 meters, and all kinds of physical exercises are based on the most standard postures and are highly difficult to reach everyone's limit. The level of harshness far exceeds the usual impression of Nai Chen among the disciples. 1, 2, 3, 4. Loud slogans echoed over Tianyun Palace. Running in the huge square, the team of male disciples eager to become stronger was so uniform that it could not even be seen that they had gone through the first day of training. As the setting sun slanted down, one could clearly see that all these disciples were sweating and very tired. But even so, feeling that the power in their bodies seemed to become more and more abundant, the male disciples were extremely happy and became more devoted. Even as time goes by, the loudness of the slogans has not weakened at all. How is it possible? Even Elder Wang on the side couldn't help but be a little shocked by the scene in front of him. He has never heard that physical training can actually improve strength. But the scene in front of him was obviously completely different from what he knew. as long as you have faith in your heart and do your best in the direction of your faith. In fact, whether it is physical exercise or any other method, it will be greatly improved. At this moment, Nai Chen on the side suddenly said. This truth was also one of his insights. So that's how it is. In an instant, Elder Wang became extremely serious, and even nodded with a bit of excitement in his eyes. In the eyes of countless cultivators in Lanchuan continent, only the level of cultivation can determine the strength of strength. But few people know that cultivating the mind is also a part of cultivation. Nai Chen's seemingly unintentional words also awakened him in a subtle way. Although he did not participate in the training of the disciples, Elder Wang's heart seemed to be clear in an instant, and he suddenly had a great epiphany. He couldn't help but look at Nai Chen. Although he didn't say it, Elder Wang couldn't help but feel a little respect in his heart. It seems that Nai Chen is indeed far from being as simple as he imagined. As the sun sets, looking at the many disciples who seem to have found their true selves in the training and have greatly improved their mentality, Elder Wang can't help but feel a sense of emotion in his heart. People always try their best to pursue the great way, but they don't know that the real great way is sometimes in themselves, or around themselves. Wait, this breath. However, while sighing, Elder Wang suddenly felt a cool breath coming. The Queen, it seems to be coming here.